Somewhere along the Appalachian Trail corridor, deep inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the night is absolute. No moon, no wind, just the dense, wet silence of a southern Appalachian hollow at elevation. A lone backpacker lies zipped inside his sleeping bag, dead asleep, until nylon tears less than 3 feet from his head. A low, guttural huffing pushes through the gap. The rainfly hangs in shreds. Then, nothing. Darkness. To understand how this man ended up face-to-face with a 200-pound food-conditioned black bear, we need to rewind roughly 36 hours. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. A 31-year-old software developer from Charlotte, North Carolina, is loading a 60-liter pack in the back of his car at a trailhead parking lot. He is not new to the mountains. He has logged dozens of day hikes across the southern Appalachians, Linville Gorge, Shining Rock, the Roan Highlands. But he has never spent a night alone in the backcountry. This trip, a 2-night loop along the Boulevard Trail toward the LeConte Backcountry Shelter System, is his first. He has done his homework. He carries a permit, a headlamp with fresh batteries, a water filtration system, and a full bear canister borrowed from a coworker who had used it the previous fall in the Pisgah. By most measures, he is better prepared than the majority of overnight visitors who pass through these mountains each season. But tucked into the mesh side pocket of his pack, the open, elastic-topped pocket that faces outward on every step of the trail, are 2 Cliff Bars and a half-empty tube of honey-flavored lip balm. He knows they are there. He considers them too minor to bother sealing away. Energy bars for a quick trail snack. But before we get to what happened in those next critical seconds inside that tent, if this kind of detailed, case-driven analysis is something you find valuable, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you hit subscribe and leave a like. Every video on this channel is built on hours of incident reports, wildlife data, and forensic detail, because these stories deserve more than sensationalism. Your support helps me keep producing them at that standard. Now, back to that torn rainfly and a 31-year-old man 4 seconds into the most terrifying moment of his life. Lip balm because the ridgeline air dries his skin. Small items, trivial, not worth the trouble of unscrewing the canister lid. This is the thread that unravels everything that follows. Day 1 begins under overcast skies. The trail climbs steadily through old-growth Fraser fir, the trunks dark and straight, the understory quiet and carpeted in moss. Above 5,000 feet, the fog rolls in, not dramatically, but in slow, heavy sheets that erase the ridgeline and close the world down to 30 yards in every direction. The air turns cool and damp. Sound carries strangely up here, muffled and directionless. By late afternoon, he reaches Icewater Spring Shelter and sets up at a designated campsite nearby. There is a particular satisfaction to this moment, the pack coming off, the tent staked, the first solo overnight actually happening. He cooks a dehydrated meal on a canister stove, eats slowly, and then does exactly what a responsible backcountry camper should do. He seals his cookware, packs the bulk of his food into the bear canister, and hangs it from the shelter cable system provided by the park. The bulk of his food, not all of it. His pack, mesh side pocket still holding the 2 Cliff Bars and the lip balm, leans against the side of his tent. The vestibule is unzipped. The pocket faces outward, open to the night air. Here is what he does not know, and what most hikers never fully appreciate. A black bear's olfactory system contains roughly 300 times more scent receptors than a human's. 300 times. In dry, windy conditions, scent disperses and fragments. But in the damp, windless hollows of the Smokies, hollows exactly like the drainage below Icewater Spring, scent behaves differently. It pools, it drifts intact. Even a sealed granola bar can throw a detectable scent plume more than a mile downhill through that kind of air. An unsealed mesh pocket holding honey-flavored lip balm is not subtle. It is a signal. The hiker finishes his evening. He brushes his teeth at the water source, hangs his food bag, and climbs into his tent. He reads on his phone for 20 minutes. He zips the vestibule closed. He falls asleep. The pack sits against the tent wall with its mesh pocket open to the dark. And somewhere below, in the ice water spring drainage, a bear that has already learned to associate human camps with calories is moving through the understory, following a scent plume drifting through the damp night air. Up at Icewater Spring, the hiker is settled in for the night. His dehydrated meal is finished, his bear canister properly loaded and hung from the shelter cable system. Everything by the book. But his pack leans against the tent wall, mesh side pocket facing the open air, and inside it sit 2 Cliff Bars and a half-empty tube of honey-flavored lip balm. In the damp, windless hollows below, that scent is already traveling. It did not have far to go to find a willing nose. Park Service wildlife reports from that same summer document at least 4 bears in the Icewater Spring drainage classified as food-conditioned. These are not wild bears in any meaningful sense of the word. They are animals that have learned, through repeated success, to associate human camps with calories. The wariness that keeps a healthy black bear away from firelight and voices has been trained out of them, replaced by something closer to expectation. Where there are tents, there is food. Where there is food, there is no reason to leave. One of those 4 bears stands out in the record. A roughly 6-year-old male, identified by rangers through ear tag records, had already been hazed twice that season with rubber slugs. Both incidents occurred near the Boulevard Trail junction after the animal bluff-charged hikers on the approach. Rubber slugs are a last resort deterrent, painful enough to teach most bears that humans are not worth the trouble. This bear absorbed both rounds and came back. He had learned that the sting was temporary. The food was not. That is the animal moving through the drainage tonight. Back at camp, the hiker knows none of this. He retires to his tent around 9 p.m., stretches out on top of his sleeping bag, and reads on his phone for 20 minutes. The glow of the screen is the only light in the campsite. At some point, he sets the phone aside, zips the vestibule closed, and lets the sounds of the mountains settle around him. The creak of fir branches, the distant trickle of the spring. Sleep comes easily. He has earned it. He has no idea what is moving through the drainage below. At approximately 11:40 p.m., the tagged male enters the campsite perimeter. Trail camera timestamps later recovered by park biologists confirm what happened next. The bear did not charge. It did not rush. It circled the shelter area for nearly 7 minutes, moving in a slow, deliberate arc around the perimeter, testing the air. 7 minutes is a long time in the dark. Long enough for the animal to catalog every scent source in the campsite, rank them, and choose. It zeroed in on the hiker's tent. What followed has been reconstructed from 2 sources: the hiker's own account, given the next morning at the Sugarlands Visitor Center, and the claw mark forensics on the tent fabric itself. The bear pressed its nose against the rainfly directly over the mesh side pocket. It could smell the Cliff Bars. It could smell the honey lip balm. Through a single layer of nylon and mesh, those items were as obvious to the animal as a lit sign. The bear hooked a single claw through the fabric and peeled a 14-inch gash downward. One smooth, unhurried motion. The rainfly split open like paper. The hiker woke to the sound of ripping nylon less than 3 feet from his head. Then came the breath. Hot, wet, heavy, moving across his bare forearm where it lay outside the sleeping bag. A low, guttural huffing filled the tent. The air smelled like damp fur and something sour underneath it. His first instinct was to freeze. It is an understandable response. Every mammal carries some version of it, the ancient calculation that stillness equals invisibility. And in certain encounters, it can save your life. A surprise meeting with a grizzly, for instance,
where playing dead can reduce the animal's aggression by removing the perceived threat. But this was not a grizzly. And this was not a surprise encounter in the open.
A black bear that enters a tent for food is operating in predatory or investigative drive. It has made a deliberate choice to approach. Stillness does not deter it. Stillness confirms that the food source is unguarded. Both the National Park Service and the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee are explicit on this point. The recommended response is immediate, assertive noise. Shouting, banging, making yourself as large and loud as possible. The hiker knew this, somewhere beneath the adrenaline. But knowing and doing are separated by a gap that, in the dark, with hot breath on your skin, feels infinite. 4 seconds passed. The bear was still there, and the hiker had not moved. A 200-pound black bear is pressed against the rain fly. A 14-inch gash hangs open in the nylon, and inside the tent, still half-wrapped in his sleeping bag, the hiker has not moved. Hot breath rolls across his forearm. The animal huffs once, low and guttural, and pushes its muzzle deeper through the tear. Every second of silence is a second the bear reads as no resistance. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. 4 seconds of paralysis, and then something in him breaks loose. He screams. Not a word, not a command, just raw, full-throated volume erupting from the bottom of his lungs. He kicks hard at the tent wall, feels the fabric bow outward against mass, and his right hand finds the emergency whistle clipped to his sternum strap. He blows it. The piercing shriek cuts through the hollow like a siren, bouncing off the Fraser fir and the wet rock faces above Icewater Spring. The bear flinches. It pulls back from the gash, drops to all fours, and moves. Not a sprint, more of a heavy, deliberate retreat. 20 yards. It stops at the edge of the tree line, turns its head, and holds there, watching, breathing. The hiker does not stop shouting. He keeps the whistle between his teeth and yells between blasts, his voice cracking, his hands shaking so badly he can barely grip the nylon. Minutes pass. The bear's silhouette shifts once, twice, then dissolves into the understory. The forest swallows the sound of its footfalls, and then there is nothing but the hiker's own ragged breathing and the slow drip of condensation off what remains of the rainfly. He does not sleep again. He sits upright in the damaged tent for the rest of the night, headlamp switched to its highest setting, the whistle clenched in his fist. Every snap of a twig pulls his eyes to the gash in the wall. Every rustle in the rhododendron tightens his grip. The hours between midnight and dawn have never moved so slowly for anyone. At first light, gray, damp, the ridgeline barely visible through low cloud, he breaks camp with hands that still won't quite steady. He stuffs the shredded tent into his pack without folding it, shoulders the load, and hikes out. By mid-morning, he is standing at the front desk of the Sugarlands Visitor Center, filing an incident report with a ranger who has heard versions of this story before. The response is swift. Rangers close the campsite for 72 hours. A culvert trap, a large, baited cylinder designed to capture a bear alive, is set along the drainage trail the tagged male is known to frequent. Wildlife biologists pull the trail camera footage that would later confirm the animal's 7-minute approach, the circling, and the precise moment it locked onto the tent. But none of that changes the central fact of what happened, and that fact deserves to be named plainly. The hiker did almost everything right. He carried a bear canister. He stored his main food supply on the shelter cable system. He had a permit, a plan, and gear appropriate for the terrain. What he did not do
the single overnight mistake that set every subsequent second in motion, was seal away 2 Cliff Bars and a half-empty tube of honey-flavored lip balm sitting in the mesh side pocket of his pack. To him, those items were trivial, barely worth thinking about. To a 6-year-old male black bear with 300 times more scent receptors than a human nose, a bear already conditioned across 2 seasons to associate human camps with easy calories, those items were a neon sign glowing in the damp night air from over a mile downhill. Leaving any scented item outside a sealed container in bear country, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant it seems, is enough to invite exactly this encounter. So if you take anything from this, take 3 things. First, treat every scented item as food equivalent. Toiletries, wrappers, flavored lip balm, if it has a smell, it goes in the canister or the hang bag. No exceptions.
Second, never store scented items in your tent or in an accessible pack pocket. The bear canister and the cable system exist for everything with an odor, not just the obvious food. Third, know the species-specific response before you need it. A surprise encounter with a grizzly and a black bear entering your tent demand opposite reactions. Playing dead with a food-conditioned black bear pressing through your rainfly is not caution. It is an invitation. And 4 seconds of hesitation in the dark is 4 seconds too many. The hiker survived because, after those 4 seconds, he did the right thing. He made noise. He fought back. He refused to be quiet. But picture the mesh side pocket one more time, the same pocket from the beginning of this story. Picture it empty. Picture it zipped shut with nothing inside it. That is what the night should have looked like. In bear country, the smallest oversights carry the highest stakes, and 4 seconds of knowing what to do made the difference between a terrifying story and a fatal one.